Welcome everyone to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, and joining me as always is Tim.
Howdy.
Howdy.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe set in Texas. I suppose you're on
go.
brand. Yes. This is a horror.
What should I have said? I'm a goddamn sex symbol? Is that would that have been better?
Well, you got a bit of a mustache thing going here. Maybe it would. Maybe it'd work. In context. I can't believe you grew a porn mustache just for this review, Tim.
Oh, don't act like it ain't the best seat in town.
Welcome everyone. This is a horror movie podcast. We get together and we talk about a horror movie. It's quite that simple. Coming up on today's show, we will be talking about X, the new Ty West movie. Well, it's still kind of new. It's still playing in theaters.
Yeah,
it's been a couple of weeks. I'm saying that because it's been 2 weeks since I've seen it. So if my minutia, if some of the minutia has faded in my mind, I'm going to have to count on Tim. Oh dear, to keep me right. But
I'll help you out, Grandpa. If your old man brain can't remember something from 2 weeks ago.
Again, I'm younger than you are. Jesus Christ. So yes, now I saw a couple of weeks ago. Tim has been very busy. Tim still has a hard time getting to the theater. At a moment's notice, got a lot of stuff going on. There's a baby.
It's a little tough. I had some family visiting, and me and my brother really wanted to go to the movies, and we kept saying like every night it was like, oh, maybe like tonight after we put Wyatt to bed, we'll go see a movie. And then sure enough, every night you're just completely exhausted and it doesn't happen. But I was determined though. I've been really wanting to go to the movies, and thank God they finally put out a movie that's under 2 hours that I can finally be like, all right, I can probably schlep my way on down to the theater.
Yeah, because we'd recorded in advance because we knew you were going to be busy for the back half of the month, so we had gotten ahead on recordings. So nothing's late episode wise, but Tim was just determined to see it before it was time to record the next episode so that we could talk about X. So alas, here we are. Because it's in the theaters, I get an easy episode and I don't have to edit this because I can't get clips. So this is just a straight podcast format this time.
Well, we could do reenactments if you want.
What scenes would you like to reenact, Timmy?
I think you know which ones.
And who's playing who? That's the real question. I want to know. So yes, we'll start spoiler free, of course, as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we go into the spoilers. But X is the new Ty West film. It is set in Texas. It's 1979. Obviously, it's kind of a slashery movie set in Texas in the 70s. It's hard not to immediately think, wait, is this not a little Texas Chainsaw Massacre? And it's definitely aware of those comparisons. And the characters even travel to their destination in a van. It's not unlike the van in Texas Chainsaw. There's a lot of parallels to be drawn. But the premise of the film is that the group of characters are going to this farmhouse to shoot a porno. And there's a lot of...
for listeners that don't know, can you explain what a porno is?
Pornographic material, Tim, for those who don't know, is explicit sexual interaction and intercourse caught on camera for the titillation of the viewer who may or may not pleasure themselves to the footage they are watching.
As long as you're at home. Don't do it in the theater. Some people have gotten in trouble for that.
That is true. You say that, but porn in this era was probably mostly in like skeevy, pervy theaters. Oh
yeah, I think they actually even mentioned that at one point in the movie. He says like, I think the home video market's really going to take off.
And I'm sure the porn audience ejaculated. When home video became a thing. I was going to say exploded, but I thought it'd be funnier to make a sex.
Yeah.
There may be a lot of sex jokes this episode, guys. I'm going to warn you right now.
We're both a little randy. It's all right.
A little bit. Yeah. So that's the premise, and obviously while they're shooting this, You've got like, sort of the elderly couple who are renting out their like sort of like guest house to this group, and they don't know they're shooting a porno. So there's some tension there, but obviously eventually the characters start being killed off, and we'll get into all that juicy stuff when we get into spoilers. So yeah, we'll get into it. I'll go through the cast list in a bit in a minute, but I think we'll get the general impressions out of the way first. Tim, what did you think of X, and did X give it to you?
Okay. So I was really excited about this, and one of the reasons why I, because there had been other stuff in theaters that we wanted to do and haven't really gone around to, but one of the reasons why I really wanted to make a special trip out for this one is because I've been hearing a lot of good things, and it's kind of interesting. I want to say that like I'm a pretty big Ty West fan, but in actuality I'm probably just like a huge House of the Devil fan. Like that's a movie that I really liked when it first came out, and it just kind of keeps creeping up and up like on my list of favorites, which it might even be in like my top 10 horror at this point. I watch it every year in October, and I just think it's just a masterpiece, like a flawless horror movie. And I've seen all of Ty West movies after that, and I don't really hate them, but like just nothing has been as much of a home run, or something that I've loved since House of the Devil. So I've really wanted him to just come back with like another big hit, and I've been hearing a lot of good things about this, so I was really excited to see it, and I knew pretty much nothing about it going in, so that felt really good to be surprised by a lot of stuff. I don't even think I actually watched a trailer. Basically all I knew was like the general premise of it. People shooting a porno in Texas, and something happens, I assume. I ended up seeing it a Saturday night at a 10:15 show, which is dangerous since I'm an old man. Anything past like 10 o'clock, you run the danger of falling asleep. But I absolutely love this movie. There was no fear of me like falling asleep. Because I just was glued to my seat the whole time. I think it's I think
you were glued to your seat. Was there a sticky white substance on your seat, Timmy?
Maybe. No, I have a lot that I want to say about this, but I was just really giddy with how great this turned out. I think it's an absolutely beautiful movie. I mean, one of the things like I love so much about House of the Devil is it has such a great look to it. It feels like it's like a lost movie right out of the 70s, and while like I never felt like this movie was made in the 70s, like I do love like the general look of the characters and the just like even the small scenes in the beginning, like when they're just going to these like kind of small like convenience stores and gas stations and stuff. I just think it absolutely looks great. Whenever there's like gore, it's handled really well, and I just think Ty West is really good at just making you feel so like unnerved and uncomfortable. He has these like kind of long, slow, patient shots that sometimes it'll be nothing, or like the characters aren't realizing that something's about to happen or is going to happen, but that there's something off, that there's something like weird or disturbing that's about to happen, and just fills you with so much tension and dread. And the horror stuff really doesn't like kick in until pretty late in this movie, but I feel like there's so many like instances where you just know something is off, or like something weird is going to happen. It really keeps you on the edge of your seat. And I love the characters in this. I think everyone was, the performances were all great. The characters were really interesting and charming. And, it's one of those horror movies where you actually care like about the characters, and they're not just fodder to, give way to some cool kills or some like crazy maniac. They're like, oh, I can't wait to see how this person's going to die. It's like, no, I generally like these characters, and, kind of want to see what happens to them. And then there's some interesting stuff that I feel like they kind of subvert with the usual horror tropes, but I can't really get into that without, till we talk about the spoilers and stuff. And it's kind of hard because even like, stuff I want to say about like, I guess the villains and stuff in this movie, but, that's really hard to talk about any of that stuff without spoiling it. But I mean, suffice it to say, the movie looked great. It sounded great. All the characters were great. the I'll try not to say great again. The I thought, and unlike House of the Devil, which I think is like I love it, and it has like kind of a consistent tone throughout the movie, and it's like it's kind of like serious and stuff, but this actually had like a lot of moments of like levity, and like there were jokes and stuff that actually worked. They're not like annoying cringy stuff that takes you out of the movie. Like the characters would say funny things, or like a funny thing would pop up or happen, and then there's so many good like instances where something that happens that'll just like really like disturb you or weird you out. But I mean, I was absolutely in love with this picture. I thought it was great. I had a blast.
In love with this picture? What are you, 80? I really like this picture.
Yeah, this talkie was quite swell, I guess.
Well, that was a long monologue, Tim. I'm not gonna lie.
Hey, you asked me what I thought.
Sometimes it's like you're worried we're not going to talk about some of the details, and you just like, I have to get through everything I care about in one breath, just in case.
Hey, you never know. My computer could crap out, and you could say, "Well, let's just put this out as the episode."
Oh, just a short 5-minute segment. Yeah, I like the movie a lot. If anything, the only negative thing I'll really say about my reaction to the movie is that it might have been just slightly overhyped, because people were so hyped up. They were so in love with it before I saw it that I was expecting to be blown away. Don't make any jokes. I know what you're thinking. Don't say it. I was expected to be blown away, and I would say that I was constantly engrossed in the filmmaking. I think the biggest star of this film is the cinematography. It is Absolutely. The pacing of the shots. It is all that stuff. I do think the characters are memorable, if not largely likable, and because of that, it does kind of stick out from a lot of other horror movies because of that. I'm not sure if it necessarily looks as authentically made in the 70s as House of the Devil does, right. But it definitely has like a pacing to its editing and that feels more old school, and was very refreshing because of that. I mean, the opening shot of the movie is a very long, slow track-in shot, and we'll talk about what's in the shot when we get to spoilers, but that's how the movie opens. And then there's lots of things where it's not afraid to take its time to linger on a moment. It'll do like a lot of a scene in a single shot when it's called for, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, and I like how like part of you have the one character, the like writer director RJ, who his whole thing is that he wants to make like a classy porno. Like he keeps talking about the French New Wave and how he's gonna make it like avant-garde, and you can kind of see that. I feel like that's almost kind of like what Ty West is trying to do with the movie. Like he's not trying to make like a sleazy horror picture. Like he wants something like a little more avant-garde. So you get kind of like these quick cutaways and these like really fancy shots. So that I think
There's a really specific thing it does a few times in the movie where it transitions from one scene to another by cutting back and forth for a little bit. That probably sounds a bit weird to say. What I mean is that it'll cut ahead in time to the next scene, but it'll actually kind of like cut back to the previous scene for a couple of times as it's transitioning, and it's really hard to explain. It makes sense when you see it and you understand what it's doing. I know
exactly what you're talking about.
But it's very. It does feel a bit arty when it does things like that, and I have no complaints. But at the same time, it does feel quite sleazy in the ways that it's supposed to feel quite sleazy. So, it does a good job of tackling its subject and kind of subverting some of the ideas and character roles and even gender roles that you might assume are going to happen, you might assume is going to happen, or even the fact that you might be thinking it's going to go a certain way because it's so much like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre and it's set up, but it does other things with it. There is, I think the only critique of the movie itself that I might give when we get into spoilers is I've got it's kind of a catch-22 with the villains a little bit.
Oh, okay.
A little catch-22. There's something that I like that it does with the villains, but at the same time it kind of hurts in the context of horror movie villains. So We'll get into that when we can talk details. But that would be the only like actual critique I would have, pretty much, because everything else, like, it sets up like 5 or 6 main characters. They're all very memorable. I'm not good with names, don't get me wrong, but I'm not counting names here. I'm talking about, I remember their personalities and I always remembered who they were, to the point where it started to make sense when they'd make certain decisions or when they would do certain things. None of the characters felt expendable in a way where it was just kind of obvious, like you said, they're not just fodder to be killed at various points. But I think that's part of the reason why something else you said is the case, which is why the horror stuff, quote unquote, doesn't kick in really until like maybe 2/3 is a bit of a stretch, but quite late into the movie compared to like a slasher movie where you have to make sure you've got a kill like every 15 minutes just to keep the audience entertained. This doesn't do that. You know, it takes its time, builds things up, and the result of that is that you've spent enough time with the characters building up who they are that it means something when they're in danger a little bit later. So
yeah, definitely. Like I was talking to someone who was kind of, you know, they liked it, but they're kind of saying like, yeah, the first half is kind of slow. And I was like, oh, are you kidding? Like, I was so engrossed, like, because again, like you're saying, like the cinematography is so beautiful that, like, yeah, even if, you know, not a lot of horror stuff is happening, like, it's still, the movie looks so good, and, you know, the characters are so charming and likable that I have no problem at all spending time with them. And then, like, even though, yeah, like, people aren't getting killed early on, but there is still, like, you know, weird stuff that's happening, and even like little stuff when, you know, like early on when they're driving and they pass, like, you know, a truck that, like, you know, ran over a cow, like, you know, there's still like kind of like gross horror stuff that, like, you know, that like you never really forget that like you're in a horror movie, you know?
Oh yeah, no, that's something I would say is that while we're saying the horror stuff doesn't kick in till a certain point in the movie, all we really mean by that is the characters directly being targeted for killings. It never doesn't feel like you're in a horror movie. Although, you know, it does start off with like a scene that's set after most of the movie, right? It does that thing where it, you know, it gives you a little bit from the ending and then cuts back to the start of the story. And that's a bit of a trope, and TV shows especially overuse it. Like every TV show has an episode that does that. But I think in this case, I understand the purpose of it, because I think Ty West wanted to set a horror movie tone, and that opening gives you this sinister, macabre tone that's like something bad is going to happen. It's very intentionally setting a scene, because if you didn't do that, if you just cut straight to the introduction of the characters leaving the strip club, you might not necessarily have that feeling of I'm in a horror movie right away. You might be going, oh, it's like a sex comedy or something. But because you start off with that scene from later on, it kind of sets you up for like, no, there's something. They're spiraling towards something here, and you have that feeling the whole time.
Yeah, you know it's going to be a bad time, and I'm sure you're probably pretty giddy with that opening, the way it's like framed, because it almost looks like it's like I don't know, you'll probably know like the specific aspect ratios or something, but like the way they kind of
Tim? You're talking about aspect ratios.
I mean, I'm sure you can probably describe it better than me if you know, it's been a while, so you might not remember that specifically, but it kind of like starts off with, it almost looks like it's like a square picture, and it almost kind of looks like what you would think what like the camera frame that they're using would be, but then it's actually like part of the house, like the hallways are kind of just like so dark that, you know, makes it look like it's a different like aspect ratio or whatever. But that was cool.
What Tim's trying to say is that it looks 4:3. But then you realize that the black at the sides of the screen are actually just the inside doors of, I think it's the barn that the camera's looking through, and then it reveals and goes wider into the, and it's actually only 185:1. It's not the most movies these days are 235:1 or 240:1, depending on your preference. What's interesting though is that when they're shooting the porn later, they are shooting that in 4:3. Like that's the ratio that the porn's been shot in. Whenever it cuts to the POV of the camera, that's what they're shooting in. So there is kind of like I don't know what I call it, foreshadowing, but there is 4:3 in the movie.
Yeah, it's very cool. Yeah, I like those like kind of little touches and stuff when like you're seeing like through the camera. And I mean, it's just a very well made put together movies. Lots of nice little touches like that. I'm sure there's even more things that I didn't pick up on. But I had another thought, but now but I lost it. So you can say the next thing.
Say the next thing. Like I've got an itinerary like written down in front of me. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I would just say it's a really good movie that has unique, interesting ideas. It feels like a movie that a director made because they were passionate about something. I said we were going to talk about the cast. You know, we got Mia Goth as Maxine. You have Jenny Ortega, who was just in Scream 5, so she's like instantly like a Scream queen just because she's in two of these back to back. Brittany Snow's in there, who most people probably know from the Pitch Perfect movies.
Yes.
That doesn't need to include you, Tim. I was just this for the people.
As true horror fans know her from Prom Night.
Well, I assume you mean the remake.
Of course, yeah. Duh. No, I meant my prom. I took her.
Yeah, so she plays Bobby Lynn, who I've been seeing online's kind of like who's become the fan favorite. Like people seem to really love her character.
I enjoyed her.
Yeah. You got Jackson, played by Kid Cudi, who I don't know who that is, but it sounds like someone that people know.
He's so I don't really know his music, but I guess he's like a rapper. Funnily enough, I didn't recognize him in the movie, but I know him from he was on he was like the band leader for this show Comedy Bang Bang, which I'm assuming you probably don't know, but it was like a a small like sketch show based on a really popular like alt comedy podcast. So I'd actually seen him in quite a number of episodes on that, but I did not recognize him at all in this movie. Actually, later when I saw that it was him, I was like, "Oh, holy crap! I did not recognize him at all."
Well, he does have the mustache and the hair here, which is just for the movie because he's got the 70s sort of thing going on.
Yeah.
And then I don't know. I've never heard of Martin Henderson, who plays Wayne, but he, you know what? The saddest thing, and this is not meant as an insult. But all I could think with this guy, and this is the producer who's in charge of the whole thing, who's arranged the whole trip, is all I could think was, Matthew McConaughey wasn't willing to do this little horror movie, so they got this guy instead, because he's very Matthew McConaughey in a lot of ways.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely got that vibe from him. The cast is so great, and I do wonder if like having maybe a more recognizable cast, if that might distract a little bit from it. Like, I love that everyone is like kind of a name, like they're people that have been in stuff before, but they're also not like super big distracting.
They're not huge, but like Mia Goth, like people know from like one or two movies, I think. Jenny Ortega, the only reason why anyone knows who she is really is because she was just in Scream 5, I think. Like, I mean, at least to a horror crowd. Like, I don't know if she was in like some Disney Channel thing or something.
They always are.
I mean, we actually maybe could have recognized her from Babysitter 2 from Killer Queen.
Oh, okay.
I can't remember, but I'm going to assume that she was kind of like the badass love interest who was introduced in the second one.
That makes sense. Yeah.
But I mean, that's just a guess based on like not being able to remember it that well.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, and she was also the vice president's daughter in Iron Man 3, but she was probably like 10 or something.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah, but 10ish. Yeah, she's like 18, I think, just now.
Yeah. I remember what I was gonna say before, so we'll circle back to me.
All right, Tammy.
I was just gonna say I like the movie is like a kind of meta in that it's like it's a movie about making movies, which obviously it's a porno movie, which is very different than, well, I mean, is it so different than most movies that we watch? Like I mean, horror movies do usually have like a like a strong relationship with sex. I feel like so I feel I like that kind of aspect to it, that I always kind of enjoy movies about making movies, and I feel like there's probably like a lot that the director probably has to say. Like I mean, I'm speaking out of line here, but I don't know, like I wouldn't be surprised if there's stuff in here that like relates to like their own struggles with trying to get stuff made and how they feel about movies and stuff. I'm sure you probably like related to some of the stuff like the director and stuff was saying. Like at one point they reference like Psycho and everything.
Sure. Or even just the idea that they're going to ask for forgiveness later rather than permission just now. Anyone who's ever made a student film will know that. Know that mantra, that feeling.
That's a good point. Like, that does remind me of like stuff like, I've made like videos and stuff with my friends where like, you just pull up somewhere and it's just like, all right, come on, like roll now before like anyone sees us. Like
before anyone calls the authorities. Yeah, because we're trespassing. Yeah.
If they ever do a sequel, maybe like we could star like where we rent out a house somewhere to record a podcast. And
I don't know if we're going to have quite the same appeal as like, here's all these actresses who are making a porno versus us making a podcast. They may not have the same. It
can be a sexy podcast.
Yeah, and of course, the big thing we've not really spoken about yet is the movie. It does have like some pretty heavy themes, and it's about youth. It's about not wasting your youth. It's about obviously the movie's called X, and part of that is having that X factor, right? That's kind of what it's talking about. Obviously, there's a bit of a double, triple meaning because X is used as the rating for porn movies, and for movies that don't get a rating or are banned because they're too violent or grotesque or whatever.
Yeah,
things
Plus,
like that.
I don't know if you caught this, but they're all mutants. I don't know if it's subtle, but
I didn't notice that. No.
Yeah.
This is an X-Men movie, is what you're telling me. Okay.
Well, it's a prequel. The sequel is X2, X-Men United.
Sure. All right. That may be the dumbest joke that's uttered during the course of this show. Not in the show's history, just this episode. Let me make that clear, because Tim's had some dumb jokes in the past.
Oh, of course, yeah.
No one's denying that. Yeah, no, because it is rich in themes, and by the time it got to its third act and it was doing a lot of things with its final characters, you really felt those themes sort of continuously being deepened by each new layer. Because I think some horror movies will have like a theme, right? They'll have like a sort of a subtext that is introduced with just what the premise of the movie is. And this isn't even just horror. This is going to be weird, but I'm going to compare it a little bit to Seeing Red, right? Which is the Pixar movie that just came out.
Turning Red.
Sorry, Turning Red. Yes, not Seeing Red. Turning Red, which is the movie about the 30-year-old girl, and the whole thing's like a metaphor for her going through puberty.
That's the one that you famously said you couldn't relate to, right?
That was not me. That was some asshole writer for our website. I found it very relatable, in fact, but it was a really good movie.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah,
but the whole thing. The whole thing was a metaphor that whenever she was like, going to get the red face from like getting her period or whatever, she turned into this fluffy red bear instead. And so it's all a bit of a metaphor. But as the movie went on, it didn't just stop there. Like everything it added in about the mother feeling weird about what her daughter was going through and trying to control her life, the daughter finally lashing out at her parents, how she feels about boys, like everything it was doing, and everything it was sort of like bringing in different family members, it kept taking what the initial metaphor was and adding more layers to it, so it worked on multiple levels, and it wasn't just the thing it started with. I feel like X is kind of the same thing, where as it goes on and it starts to talk more about someone having this X factor and the freedom to do things like be in porn versus, because the movie does keep cutting back to this well, not cutting back, but like every so often we'll see it played on a TV somewhere. There's like a pastor like talking about the dangers of like all these like unchristian people out there and like pornography and heavy metal music and all these things. The devil is coming for us all. It's infected our communities. This southern
podcasts.
Podcasts, yes. So you've got that going, and you've got all these like themes going, and as it continued into the third act of the movie, I felt some of the themes getting just more intricate in what they were saying and what they were doing, and things were adding to what the messaging was, as opposed to we've got a sort of basic message, but now it's just an excuse to have some kills and just go from there. Which isn't necessarily bad. I like lots of movies that don't have any messaging, they don't have any themes. But I'm complimenting this one because it does feel like it actually has something to kind of say. It does kind of feel like a love letter to... This is funny I'm going to say this because Rob Zombie has been trying desperately his entire career to do this, but it feels like a genuine, authentic love letter to exploitation cinema of the 70s,
Absolutely, yeah.
And I can't claim to like think of this last part. I read this last part because I wouldn't have ever thought of this. But the idea being that this was also the time period. What part of the reason why it might have been set in 79 instead of just say 75 or whatever is because this is right before like the Reagan era and like US politics,
sure.
and kind of like the moral majority took over for a while, and we kind of went into a different era after this. This was kind of the end of like the freedom era, if you will, of exploitation of sex and movies and all that sort of stuff. And you do feel that. I mean, obviously there was horror movies and stuff, and there's a lot of good horror movies in the 80s, but I think generally speaking, independent cinema and like the edginess of it definitely felt a lot grittier in the 70s. It felt a lot more wild.
Absolutely, yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot, and I think this kind of relates in many ways to like, you know, the current climate. Like I think you can look at this and sort of talk about the movie's politics and about all the things it's talking about, and then just think about some of the debates that happen today and about some of the things that some of the freedoms that are trying to be either taken away or some of the more conservative ideas that are maybe, you know, rampant. And we won't get into it because it'll just turn into a political discussion. But
for sure, yeah.
I think this movie in many ways is sort of saying like that, you know, we're in a bit of a cycle and we're kind of, you know, this is kind of, you know, so there's a lot here going on, I think.
Yeah. I agree. I think it's, you know, a very smart movie. It has a lot to say. I'm actually, this is one I'm like really excited for whenever it comes out on Blu-ray, because I'll definitely, you know, be scooping it up and you know, watching it again. But yeah, I really enjoyed it again. And you know, and one thing, I mean, surprisingly enough, you know, like one thing we haven't really talked about, because yeah, there's just so much other stuff to talk about the movie, but you know, the horror itself, like, you know, once it does start happening, I think that is also handled really well. Like you know, there's a lot of like gore and blood in it that I liked a lot. Like I thought the kills were pretty varied, and you know, each one was fun, you know, in its own way. And you know, there are some scenes that like, you know, like really got to me that I was like, ooh, ugh, like I don't like that. And then again, there's like some stuff that was like just really you know, like planned just really well, like, you know, scenes where like, you know, you'll see someone walking towards something and it's just like, oh, okay, you know that's gonna happen, or you know, like you're just getting like, you know, geared up for, you know, like you're starting to feel uneasy because, you know, like something's wrong or something is about to happen. And yeah, and then it also had like some like, you know, genuine kind of like, you know, parts that are like gory and violent, but also like in kind of a funny way.
Yeah, there's some surprising stuff. I will say there's actually one kill that I thought was lame at first, and then it went back to it after a cutaway, which was kind of weird, but it kind of worked in the context of the scene. And it was actually when it cut back to it and we saw more of the aftermath that it became kind of a good kill to me.
Okay.
I don't know if you know what I'm talking about just from that, but
not off the top of my head, but I will. We'll see. We'll get into it. But yeah, it is. My theater wasn't like super packed. Like it was like, movie's been out for like like a week or two at this point, and then it was like 10 o'clock on a Saturday night. So you know, I mean, I was glad because you know, I'm vaccinated and everything, but like I'm still like a little iffy about going to super crowded things, which is why I'll probably never see like a comic book movie in the theaters again,
because they're always sold out and packed.
Yeah, unless it's Morbius. Morbius is probably the only one I feel safe at.
Oh, don't go see Morbius. No, Tim, don't do it. And for anyone who's heard Tim say we're going to review Morbius, we are not.
I mean, I guess we don't do horror movies anymore. But
come on, it's not. It's come on. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that there's not some movies we've done that are just as borderline, but come on, Morbius is not a must talked about horror movie.
But I mean, I digress. But it was nice because there was like a few people in the theater. Like there's probably like at least 10 of us or so. And I think it's a fun movie to see in theaters. Like, you know, there was times like, you know, we had like little collective laughs or gasps or whatever. So, you know, although someone did start hiccuping at the start of the movie, and I was like, I hope they're not going to hiccup the whole movie. But luckily they didn't. Whew, thank goodness.
Just getting flashbacks to Connor, hiccuping everywhere. Yeah, weird tidbit in my showing actually. It's not a big deal, but the subtitles for hard of hearing were on.
Oh, interesting.
It was really weird. It's like it took me a second to notice because I was like, oh wait, the subtitles playing, and it was bizarre because I double checked afterward. It didn't bother me that much. I was like, oh whatever. If this is the show I'm at, whatever. No big deal. But when afterwards I was curious, like, did it say like when I bought my ticket, like it was obviously this is the subtitled showing, and it didn't. And what's really weird about it as well is that I was the only one in the theater. So
it's not like someone else asked for it.
It's not like there was someone else, who said, hey, can you turn the subtitles on? Part of me was like, I don't want to mishead the movie, but I probably could just say, hey, can you turn the subtitles off, please? Because I'm the only one here. It's not like anyone else is needing them. But no big deal. Never happened to me before, though.
That's interesting. Yeah, I don't think I've seen that.
I think my theory is that the last showing the previous day was a subtitled showing, and they just never turned them off. Like it was the toggle was just still on, and so there it was. So yeah, weird tidbit. I watched the movie subtitled, which is, you start noticing them after a couple of minutes. You don't even really, they sort of blend into the screen. But
I'm sure it helped you understand those wacky American accents.
I mean, to be fair, the old couple, the old man especially, did sometimes grumble or mumble a little bit. He had that thick Southern Texas kind of drawl thing going on. Some of the words bled together a little, but that's what it is. You get enough of it. You understand enough from the words you do catch. It's fine. So, I was trying to think if there's anything else we should talk about before we jump into spoilers. If there's anything else. Probably not. I think everything's been said that can be said, so I will give the spoiler warning for X. From here on out, you've been warned. So, opening scene, that opening shot, that slow track into the farmhouse, and there's a bit of blood here or there. There's like a sheet over someone's body, and it's just eventually the sheriff arrives and is just sort of slowly walking. And there's something about really good sound design where there's something so satisfying and just mood setting is like someone's footsteps walking around as they're checking out like a quiet crime scene. Like, hearing the footsteps on the gravel and then on the wood of the porch and then in the wooden floors of the house. Especially a setting like this where it has like, you expect everything around there to make a sound, like, that, gravelly ground and those like kind of creaky wooden steps and everything, like, and there were cicadas chirping because, like I said, subtitles were on. The first thing that came out said cicadas chirping. I was like, oh, thank you, subtitles. So they just kind of tease. He goes out of the basement and he sees something really horrific in the basement. We don't get to see it, but we see his reaction. And that's when it like goes to the opening titles, I think, from there. Yeah. If there was opening titles, I can't remember. It's been 2 weeks, but
I think like I don't think there's like big opening titles or something, but it might just I forget if it does the title of the movie or not. But I know if it does, then after that I know it goes like 24 hours earlier and then cuts to the burlesque club or whatever.
Yeah, and we're introduced to our characters. We, 3 of the characters at least, were introduced to Maxine, played by Mia Goth, who's got the X Factor. I don't think he uses the word X in this scene, but like, in walks Wayne, who says something that kind of makes that statement clear. She is a porn star who is a coke fiend and is snorting cocaine through a lot of this movie. We're introduced to Bobby Lynn, who's outside. She kind of presents herself as sort of the ditzy, the ditzy porn star. But I think part of the beauty of her character is that she's actually much smarter than she kind of lets on. Like, it's kind of an act where she's kind of ahead of the game in a lot of scenes in the movie. So we're introduced to her, and then they go and pick up our sort of director cameraman dude, RJ, and he has got the long hair, he's got the glasses, and then his girlfriend, who's there to help him by recording the sound, Lorraine, who is Jenna Ortega's character. So we're interested in all that. And clearly, Lorraine here, Jenna Ortega, had no idea what type of movie they were making. Like, they all start talking in the van about what they're going to be doing, and like it's when they stop to get some fuel that she's like, "Hey, like, are you okay with what are we doing here?" It's like, we have to start somewhere, Lorraine. Okay, we have to start somewhere, right? You can do really artful porn films now, okay?
Yeah, like I love like RJ's this like, you know, very, because you know, like when you think of porno, like, you know, most, and they even kind of talk about in this movie, like, yeah, all people want to see are like tits and ass, or, you know, whatever. But like I just like RJ's like this, like, no, but like we can do it better now, like we can make it classy, like this is gonna be like the first like avant-garde, like classy, you know, porn film. And I love like his kind of, I don't know, just what do you call it, like just his dreams of like, yeah, doing something and like, you know, beyond their reach. And what's really funny about it too is like once you see like, you know, the scenes and stuff that they're shooting, it's like, it doesn't really seem like anything about this is any different than like what you would see at a normal porn or something.
I think he he gets to frame it, he gets to edit it, that's all he cares about. You know, that's all he's really talking about.
Oh, the thing that's kind of like funny about that though is like, you know, and I don't know if this was maybe something that, you know, they did consciously, but like I feel like there are like definitely like horror directors and stuff that like got their start and like doing like porn stuff or sleazy stuff. Like I don't know, I could be wrong, but I think like Wes Craven and maybe like Sean Cunningham did like, I don't know if like straight up like porn stuff, but I think they did like some, you know, kind of like seedier, nastier stuff, you know, before they kind of like did their bigger horror things.
I think that's right. It's I mean, yeah, it could be a reference to the past, but I think just in general, you get this character here who clearly has aspirations that go beyond what he's been asked to do here, but he sees this as his opportunity to be like the one who knows what he's talking about in the room. Like, you know, he gets to be the one in the room who's like, no, I know how this is done. I'm a filmmaker, unlike you, cretins. Right? So he thinks he's a bit of a big shot in this context. And you know, sure enough, like, and this is one of the examples I talked about with Bobby Lynn, is she says something really ditzy like, wait, you don't have to shoot it in order. Like, you know, she asks something kind of silly like that, and he has to kind of explain editing to her. But then when they go to get a shot when they're putting fuel in the van, and she's the one who says, hey, if you shoot it from this angle, it'll look kind of phallic, like he's like the pumps his dick. And it's like, that's actually quite a smart idea, you know, for someone who didn't understand or at least claimed to not understand the concept of editing like a minute ago. Like, is already like coming out with like good ideas. So, you know. Yeah.
And like, you also like, I don't know if you get the idea too that she's seems like, you know, like she doesn't look like she's like old at all, like, you know, like she's probably just like in her 30s or whatever, but like in that industry or whatever, that's probably like ancient. But like, you know, you get the sense that she's probably been doing stuff before. So like, this is probably the first time where, yeah, they are on like, you know, maybe they've just done like other, you know, movies where they literally just shoot in order because they don't want to spend the time editing or whatever. It's like, now that like, you know, she is actually doing something that is, you know, trying to be something a little different, a little classier. But yeah, I like that, you know, she's game for it and, you know, is throwing ideas and stuff out there. One thing I really like too is just like it really doesn't take that long to kind of like figure out who all these characters are. Like, they're all very distinct and like you kind of get their deals like pretty quickly. But I don't think it's like necessarily a bad thing though, because I think you want to spend time you know, with all of them. Like, they all you know, I think are pretty charming and have like, you know, good back and forths. And I really like this cast.
This class, yeah, it's very good.
This classy cast.
No, like, I think because Wayne's very much got, obviously he's a very Matthew McConaughey like looking and sounding character, but he's got a bit of that Saul Goodman work ethic thing going on of like, you know, being a bit cheeky about how he's doing things and convinced that this is his big break. And he's in a relationship with Maxine, and she is wanting to have her big break. She's kind of the quiet, more enigmatic one. You then have J. Ortega, who's the quiet, who's actually even more quiet. Like, she's quiet, and Maxine even talks about how Lorraine, she like stares a little bit, and it makes her uncomfortable because she is so quiet and mousy. And Wayne keeps calling her church mouse because she's like from a more typical conservative like family and background.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like at first I thought that Maxine was gonna have kind of more of a role like that. Like it seemed like she might be the character that's like maybe a little bit unsure of this, but like is trying to give it a go. But I think as the movie goes on, you find out, you get to know more about her, and maybe it's because she's doing more and more coke and stuff as it comes on. But she's actually like quite confident and pretty like gung ho about everything that she's doing.
Yeah, no, she is very sure of herself in a way. There's obviously a bit of a mystery to her, but she's very sure of herself. Lorraine, on the other hand, like, who obviously is uncomfortable to be there when she learns what they're actually doing, but kind of just puts up with it, and then obviously has a bit more of a turn. What's funny though, because she is more your typically final girl, I was kind of expecting, because it kind of felt like it shifted to her for a little bit, where it was focusing more on her in the middle. And I thought, maybe this is setting us up for that. But it started with Maxine. Maxine was the first one that the film introduced us to, which is why naturally you go, she's our final girl. She's the one we're going to focus on when we get towards the end. So it kind of played with your expectations a little bit there, because by the time we get so far in, it's switched over to Lorraine, and then there might be a swerve at that point as to from there.
I think it does a really good job of subverting a lot of the tropes, because I mean we'll get into it like later on in the movie, but I think like if you're looking at like typical horror movie logic with like stuff like of the the typical final girl, and like the rules like don't do drugs, don't have sex, like a lot of that stuff kind of gets flipped around in this movie, which I thought was really fun.
Yeah, it's playing with the tropes basically. So they get to the farmhouse. And Wayne goes up on his own, and the old guy brings out his shotgun, and it's kind of awkward. But he's like, "Oh yeah, no, you did call. You're right. He's just kind of old and confused." So they get taken to the little guest house that's out on it's all it's a little bit far away. It's a good 30 feet, it's like 40 feet from the house. Yeah,
it's basically like this guy has a farmhouse, and then he has like a little. I think they refer to it as a boarding house. Like I'd probably like would have just called like a little guest house or whatever on the property, but it's like essentially a farm, and then with like this little extra house that's not right next to it, but a little on the same property, obviously.
Yeah, and there's a lot of awkwardness when he's like, "You didn't tell him you were bringing others," and he's sort of looking around at them, and he kind of thinks they're a little bit weird. And there's a little bit of the baked in kind of. Like just a little bit of racism, because he says he asks Wayne if he served, and he's like, nah, not me. And then it goes to Jackson, and Jackson says, no, I did, and he holds up his dog tags, and he talks about how he was in I'm assuming it was Vietnam given the time period. And the old man kind of questions him on it a little bit, but it's just kind of awkward because he wasn't expecting to have to sort of accept this answer from him. Right. So there's a bit of an awkward moment in there, and he's like, keep it down, keep it, don't be tasteless or anything, because my wife's in the house and she's old and sick. So, it sets some things up.
And you've seen, and I think by then you've seen like a few, like a glimpse or two of her kind of like, just like looking out through the window or whatever.
Yeah. There's some moments of her looking out the window. I think the main thing to note here, though, is just the general feeling of like the lack of acceptance and kind of the clash between what you assume is this like old conservative couple in a farmhouse, and that maybe if they found out what they were actually doing here out in the guest house, like he might bring his shotgun back out and chase them off. Like, so it's setting up kind of like a tension. Like premise, like there's a risk involved in what they're doing before we even potentially get to whatever the horror movie part of this horror movie is going to be.
Yeah, and also probably important to note too that like they're both like comically old. Like they're not just like like sometimes you see like a movie old person. It's like no, these are like really just look like they're kind of ready to fall apart, and it's all like a lot of prosthetics and old age makeup and stuff too, like they're not actually that old. In fact, one of the key things that we should now reveal here at this point is that
the old woman is actually also played by Mia Goth.
Did you know that right away? Because I didn't even realize it until the credits.
I didn't notice it was her right away, but I noticed it wasn't really an old person. And once the movie was about halfway through, it just made sense it was her because of what the themes were. Because there's a lot of the old women talking about her at her age and saying, when I was your age, this and that, and I was like, oh, this is Mia Goth. This is her as well. Because the whole point is this is the same type of person in her early 20s, where she's got her whole life ahead of her, and then at the other end of the spectrum where she's near death and maybe has lots of regrets about who she is and what she's done with her life. So it made sense that it was her. So I was like, I figured it's probably her.
Yeah.
I didn't recognize her through the makeup though. I'm not going to say that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I just wasn't thinking that hard, but then once I realized, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that totally makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So. Yeah, and there's a lot of stuff here earlier because they start making the movie, and it's, it is what it is. What you think it is. It's kind of like slightly comedic sex scenes where RJ is sort of directing. Jenna Ortega is looking kind of awkward about it. There's some funny dialogue.
And it's called The Farmer's Daughter, and it seems like it's literally just about a guy whose car breaks down near this farm, and he just has sex with all the farmer's daughters.
Yes. Yeah, because obviously he has sex with Bobby Lynn first, and then it's like, oh, she has a sister. Who is the sister? And then that's when Maxine eventually has a scene. While they're shooting the first scene, though, there's a really great sequence where Maxine goes out for a swim. Like, there's a little lake on the property. Dude,
this scene was so freaking good. Like, I was like I was losing my mind. Like, it's so goddamn beautiful, and like it's like Ty West. Why don't you explain the scene and then we can just say why it rules.
So she goes out for a swim, and it's all very like it keeps intercutting with the comedy of like the scene that they're shooting before. So it's Jackson opens the knocks on the door, and Brittany Snow's like, oh, we don't have a telephone, but my daddy can probably drive you when he gets back, and then like it progresses from there. So it's a stereotypical porn scene, and as it's cutting back and forth, like eventually we get to a scene where she's wandered out, she's found this lake, and she strips down and goes into the lake, and there's a lot of like overhead shots, and there's a lot of like her just floating in the water looking up and kind of like just being at peace, and there's nothing around her. At the end of the scene, which is the part where I think most people are going to remember, is that there's an alligator who sort of wakes up at the edge of the water. There's danger. There's like a presence to be aware of that's going to come after her. And there's this beautiful, very long shot of just this bird's eye view of her swimming quite a distance. It's like she's in the middle of the lake and she's swimming back to the dock or the pier, and the alligator is like swimming behind her slowly, and it's like a chase, but she doesn't know she's been chased by an alligator. She's just swimming at a casual speed because she's unaware that she's in danger. And I think it's kind of a metaphor for the whole movie in a lot of ways, where they're out here shooting this movie and they don't know what the real danger is. And we're in spoilers, so we can just say it's the old couple who are the danger. Right. they are the thing that they need to be scared of, and most of them die before they know that that's the case. Only one or two of them actually live long enough to realize that those are the danger element.
Yeah, so there's so many things I like about this. First of all, it's just utterly beautiful. Like you said, it's just like this really, big bird's eye view, a shot just looking down of her.
It's silent as well. There's no music or anything.
And that's one of the. I don't know. Ty West is like so strange because like I feel like I'm not sure what happened with these other movies, because I actually watched Innkeepers recently, because like I was like, I kind of want to go back and watch like Ty West's other movies, and it just feels like, I don't know if you remember Innkeepers. I forget if we did it on the show, but like it just feels like,
we haven't done it in the show. I haven't seen The Sacrament, but I have seen Innkeepers, and Innkeepers, it was all right. Like I remember having an okay time.
I mean, I think I remember like thinking it was okay, and then I was kind of watching it now, and actually it kind of fell below a little bit in my view. But like it just feels like a completely different director, like someone that's really like, relying more on like typical like just generic horror stuff, while you watch like something like this or House of the Devil, and like Ty West just is able to like take so many chances, and he has no problem like with being patient and just doing a scene like this where, you know, if you're watching like some stupid Hollywood hack do it, you know, it would be loud and they would keep doing like CGI close-ups of the gator and like
William Brent Bell, like, that sort of hack.
How dare you?
I'm shocked I got his name right. I was really pulling out of the deep for that one.
Hey, someone's living in your head rent free, my friend. And his name is the Bell. Saved by the Bell.
You know what, you're laughing, but the real joke of this is that most of the audience have no idea who I'm talking about, and that is the victory in and of itself.
If they don't know who we're talking about, then they are not true Screams fans. Please take away your Patreon money if you are.
No, don't do that. Don't do that. If anything, I cherish you as even better fans. Double your Patreon money.
But yeah, like you can just see how like something like this would just in the wrong hands, it would just come off as like really cheesy and dumb. But I just like, I love just the patience and the beauty of this scene. And what's great at this point too, in the movie, we really have no idea. Like, yeah, we know like the old couple is weird, but honestly, like I didn't know if they were going to be like the actual villains, or if there would be like some, like I don't know if they would have like a weird son or something that like, you know, you don't know about, or who knows what's going to happen. So I honestly wasn't sure if, you know, Maxine was actually going to get like, you know, eaten by the gator or not yet. So there was like real palpable tension in this scene. And like you said, it's so perfect because she doesn't know what's going on. And like, as the audience, you just have like this full head on view. And it's like, you know, like no one actually screamed in the theater, but like, you know, in my head, like I did want to scream like, oh my God, like, like swim, there's something behind you. And I don't know, it was just perfect. Like there's so much stuff that I liked about, you know, this movie, but like that kind of encapsulates, ugh, I can't talk. I haven't had dinner yet. So, but like this scene is just like absolutely perfect. I loved it so much.
Yeah. And it also kind of just exemplifies who she is in her life, and why she maybe has to go through an experience like this is because she's kind of young and stupid. And that doesn't mean to say that she's not doing like the things she's choosing to do in her life aren't necessarily the wrong choices, but she's unaware of like the potential threats to her. It's one of the things Wayne, I even remember seeing this was in, but Wayne at some point when he's talking about her becoming a big star, he talks about how people are going to look at her and that she might even become a target for people because she is a star and because she's the one that's the center of attention.
That's good. Yeah. I think I didn't even put that together. Like, you know, I think when I saw it, but that's like a good little bit of foreshadowing. Yeah,
and she's unaware of these threats, and that's what this scene is with the alligator. And by the end, you know, she's hopefully learned some lessons. But yeah, it's interesting. So there is a bit of an arc there, bizarrely, despite the fact that in many ways the film doesn't give you an arc for the things that you would think it would give you an arc for, because you think it would be characters, I don't know, becoming like, I don't know, I feel like if you're not going to have the good girl survive, which is what a lot of horror movies do, they have the innocent good one, and that often works, and it can work because of what they're saying about the characters in the film. But here instead we have this character be the final girl ultimately, and a lot of this is about like not a lot of this movie is about perception of sex workers or women in those roles. It's about gender roles, it's about these things, it's about stigma, and about breaking free of the people who try to hold you back based on those perceptions.
And I really like that scene where, like, at night when they're all just sitting around just talking about it, and they're all kind of like, you know, laying out, you know, why they do this and how they feel about it. And you know, Jenny Ortega's character is like asking them like these kind of questions, like, yeah, like, isn't it weird? And like, you know, like, and like, if you love someone, how can you have like sex with other people and stuff? And like, I like how, you know, like very blunt and honest they are about it. And, you know, it does feel like, you know, something that, you know, people would kind of talk about and think about like that day. But I like that, you know, that they're a little bit more, yeah, like kind of like they bring up like good reasonings for, yeah, why they do what they do and stuff. And it like, it never really feels like cliche or like, I feel like in lesser hands, they would come off more as like caricatures of like, just sleazy porn people, but they all feel like actual like, humans and stuff that are okay with, their bodies and what they're doing, and like, they feel very realized in that aspect.
Yeah, I mean, when they get into the conversation, Jenny Ortega starts asking these questions because she's like there. She helps film 2 porn scenes by this point, where they've shot the scene with Maxine as well, which is the really kind of hypnotic one in the barn, where the old woman's kind of watching through the window. But we'll go back and talk about some of the stuff we've glossed over. But
that was like a nice creepy scene. Yeah.
But we're in this scene and they're having this conversation, and she's specifically asking, at least to kick off with, because the thing like. Maxine's complaining that she's staring again, and then she starts to ask a question, and Wayne kind of sticks up for her and says, "See, she's just curious. Just what is it? What's the question?" And because like he's in a relationship with Maxine, she says, "Isn't it weird watching this other guy Jackson have sex with her?" And he's like, the cameras are rolling. It's different, and they kind of talk about it, and they talk about how people kind of like need them, and they sort of like toast the perverts who go to the porn theaters because they've been paying their salaries for a long time. But it kind of becomes this interesting scene where Jenny Ortega, out of almost nowhere, says she wants to do a scene in the movie, and immediately RJ is like, "What? No, we can't do that. We can't do that." And
this actually got like a pretty big like laugh in the theater, because it is like very funny, especially because they're just talking about how like like how freeing it is, and like, no, it's like it's a job, and like there's a difference between like loving and screwing and stuff. And actually I think she brings it up like right after the song. They do like a like kind of like really sweet acoustic song.
Oh yeah, the set and sing a little song. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and then like the comedic timing is just really great, because it's just kind of like this little beat, where like everyone's just having a really nice time, and it's like kind of everyone's just kind of quiet, like in the mood, and then out of nowhere she's like, "I want to be in the movie." And then of course like RJ's reaction, which again, like beforehand he's very into it and free thinking, but of course once it like is his girlfriend, he's just like, what? Like, I don't know, it's very good.
This is the thing. I think there's some interesting analysis to have here of this scene in this particular conversation, because he obviously immediately starts coming up with reasons. He's like, "Oh, you can't do that. I'd be changing things halfway through. You can't do it for this reason." He keeps coming up with different reasons, and she keeps sort of like being adamant that she wants to do it. And then eventually Wayne takes him outside and says, "Look, I remember being your age. I remember girls that age. If she's got her mind set on something, she's going to do it. So you can either support her on it, or you can be an asshole about it, and she's still going to do it anyway." And he kind of oversteps a little bit, and he says something to the effect of, "No, she's a nice girl. She's not like," and he's about to insult effectively the other two. And Wayne, actually being kind of the hero of the movie almost at this point, steps in and says, what are you going to say about them? Like, how effing dare you?" And I can't remember the exact dialogue, but he talks him down for it, and talks about his prejudice, and talks about how he's treating people differently, and his judgmental attitude here. And what I think is interesting about this whole thing, because it is kind of a horror scene where he walks back in, he's handed his camera, and it's like the slow walk to the bedroom where the other two ladies have made her up for the scene, and then the sex scene that he's about to shoot his girlfriend in this sex scene with this other guy, and it kind of, we don't have to watch it kind of fades away. We just see the start of it play out as it goes away. And then like there's scenes afterwards where he's literally in the shower just crying in pain. And I think what's interesting about analysing this scene, to me, because there's very clearly nothing wrong with someone who isn't comfortable with their loved one having sex with someone in any context, right? There's nothing, no one would think that's weird. The problem with this, and the problem why he comes across as the unlikable one who's the asshole in the scene, is because he's never honest about why. He keeps, throughout the film, he lied to her about what they were doing out here, and when she tries to challenge him on it, he acts all hoity-toity about the avant-garde of it, about how it's art, about it's this and that, as if he really believes in it. And then the second it's her suggesting that she be in the movie, and it's him that's affected, his attitude changes completely. And I think he would A, be more likable, but B, it may be a more genuine discussion of, no, this would make me uncomfortable, and honestly, it might break my heart to watch you do this. If he had just been honest about it, it would have actually maybe been okay. I mean, one way or the other.
Sure.
But what happens instead, though, is that he isn't honest about it. He insists on like keeping up this like facade and doesn't like get, you know. So because of that, he kind of, by refusing to kind of accept who he is and how he feels about something, it results in all the pain that it results in. And so much about this movie is that some of these other characters are confident in who they are and who they're, you know, what they feel comfortable doing and what they're free to do and all the rest of it. Honestly, one of the funniest moments in the whole film for me was after like RJ goes missing. Obviously, we know he's been killed at this point, but after he goes missing, and the other character, eventually Jenny Ortega wakes up and she can't find him, and then Wayne gets up, and I thought it was hilarious that Wayne was walking about in his little tighty whities like for like the rest of the movie. But when she says, "Did he leave me? Do you think he left me?" and she sort of genuinely kind of like gasps and goes, "I would never have done it if I thought I was going to hurt him." That made me laugh out loud because I thought, wait, from the impression I got in that scene when they were having the conversation earlier is that she clearly knew why he didn't want her to do it, but she wasn't going to like she wasn't going to let him away with not saying it. So, but then he never did. So I thought she knew. I mean, maybe this is a bit of a cruel thing to say, but I thought she was kind of teaching him a lesson in a weird way.
Sure. Yeah,
so it really surprised me in the moment when she very genuinely went, "Oh, I would never have done it if I thought it would hurt him." I'm like, really? You're having that realization now?
Yeah. I mean, like, you know, in reality, like, yeah, I mean, people make stupid decisions, but like, you know, in reality, you would probably just be like, "Hey, can we just go into, you know, the other room and talk about this as a couple first before we agree to do like anything?" But yeah, it does like feel very fast and stuff. And I can't help but wonder too if like, you know, part of this is, you know, if there's like a little bit of a meta angle of like, you know, or if even like, you know, Ty West has had like actual experience with this where like you have a very specific vision and then you have like a producer or something that wants to come in and start like changing things up at the last minute, and like, you know, you don't want to shoot down their ideas and be like, "No, that's stupid," but you have to kind of be like, "Oh, okay, yeah, like we can't do that because like this reason or that reason or whatever," and then like, you know, if they force you to change something about a movie and then like, you know, you just get resentful about it instead of being able to be like, "No, we can't do this because it sucks. I don't want to do it." Like, I don't know. I couldn't help but think about that.
Yeah, I mean, to be clear, obviously, even if he was honest about it, about how he felt and why he didn't want to do it, it would make him a lot more like likable and empathetic.
You definitely don't like him at that point. Yeah. Like once he's
but like but even if he was honest, let me make it clear that it would still be her choice, and she might still be adamant that she wants to do it, and that's like a, you know, a different thing at that point. But in the moment though, the way it plays out, the reason why he is the asshole in the scene is because he and in general he's probably the most unlikable of the main group because he is kind of like lying a lot, like in a very kind of like lying to himself about who he is, or at least lying to others about why he's making decisions or about what he cares about or believes in. He's kind of phony. He's a bit of a phony, I suppose, is maybe the best way to put it. And as a result, when this plays out, it's kind of like, okay, so this is like comeuppance for who you are in some ways.
Yeah.
So. And it's why he deserved to die first, and you know, in a sort of meta movie kind of way, maybe that's why he deserved to die first, is because he wasn't the one who was honest about who he was to himself.
Yeah.
So, you know, maybe I'm reading into it too much. I don't know, but it was.
No, I think that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah. So I thought that was interesting because none of the other characters come across as because there was definitely moments early on where I thought Wayne might be the sleazy producer who's kind of like, you know, he's doing things on the sly, he's lying to them a little bit, maybe he's going to like hang them out to dry later, but he never actually does. He actually, like I said, in that scene where he talks to RJ, he's actually he sticks up for the girls and makes it very clear that he respects them and that he should respect them too.
And like you kind of think like his character that like from the start would be trying to get her in like into the movie or whatever, but you know, I like that he's definitely sleazy, but not in like that kind of gross, you know, way. Like he's a much more likable kind of guy.
Yeah, he's involved in a lot of sleazy things, but he's kind of noble in his attitude when it comes to things. And that's one of the things, like I say, much like Bobby Lynn's actually got a really good mind for what she does and a really good mind for what she's doing. It just kind of works. It kind of constantly subverts some of these things. And then, of course, Jackson, they do a good job with him where when the old man comes asking for help because he can't find his wife, Jackson offers to help him, and he goes out of his way to help this old man who is, I mean, he didn't necessarily say anything racist to him, but he kind of had there was an undertone in how he responded to him.
Feel it.
Yeah. Yeah, you could feel the racist vibe, I suppose. But he went out of his way to help him, and went above and beyond, ended up crawling in some of the swamp and whatever, trying to help this old man. Bobby Lynn too actually tries to help the old lady at one point.
Yeah, and that scene is so great too when he's talking to the old man, and he's talking about they have this camaraderie because they're both soldiers and stuff, and then it's so great though when they just pan out and you see that he's naked, he's just in silhouette with this dong just hanging out.
Oh yeah, there's I mean, maybe this man is ridiculously well endowed. Because this thing was huge. I'm assuming though there was some sort of not a prosthetic per se. It was in silhouette. It didn't exactly have to be that lifelike, but yeah, you just sort of see in shadow or in silhouette, there's just something the big cock dangling between his legs. Yeah. And it's at his knees, so and
the guy already looked uncomfortable in front of everyone just before that. You can only imagine how he's feeling now.
I'm surprised he doesn't pass out when he gets an erection, to be honest, with the amount of blood. The amount of blood that it takes to fill that thing up.
Well, I mean, part of the plot is the movie is that he has a bad heart, so he can't make love to his wife.
Oh, the old man.
He's at least afraid to. Yeah.
You mean the old man though?
Old man, yeah.
I'm talking about Jackson.
Oh, okay.
Because it's so big, yeah. Tim. Yeah, right. It takes so much blood. But clearly that's just a fun little. No, it's not little, but you know what I mean. It's a fun, it's a fun joke. But he goes to help the old man. He's kind, he's generous, despite the fact that the old man's not been that nice to him. Brittany Snow's Bobby Lynn. She goes out to help the old woman when she's kind of lost and standing on the dock, and that leads to her death with the alligator. Obviously, the alligator had to, Chekhov's alligator had to come into play. So the old woman pushes her in, but all these characters, barring, funnily enough, Lorraine, whose final moments are her running off saying, "I hate you guys, you got me into this." I suppose technically RJ to a point, but he's the first kill, so it doesn't really count in the same way. But everyone else is actively being a good person up until they're murdered.
Well, so here's what's Lorraine's arc is actually really interesting because it starts off like you were even saying before that she kind of seems like the typical final girl, and they're spending some more time with her, so you think that she might be filling that role, and in a more standard movie she would be, because she'd be the one that's quote unquote good, that's not having sex and doing drugs. But halfway through the movie she kind of changes from that virginal final girl, and she agrees to kind of join these people and partake in what they're doing and have sex. And so when they do, and so I feel when she does that, it's it's almost okay, she can survive at this point, but then when she dies is actually when she rejects them again. When instead of sticking with Maxine later on, that's when she says no, screw you, I hate you guys, and when she rejects them is when she actually gets killed, which is just a really funny reversal. It's
she blames them for they made her worse and drew her into their world, and she blames them for corrupting her. So it's almost she at that point kind of represents someone who gets caught having a mistress or something, goes, "Oh no, it was the devil made me do it. These corrupt people who are into heavy metal made me cheating my wife," kind of thing. You can sort of see she's sort of basically crawling back to the conservative world, if you will. And blaming these people for getting her in this mess.
Absolutely.
I mean, I was laughing a little bit at the start of that because you sort of paused at a weird time when you said virginal, and I thought for a sec you said vaginal, and it was a really weird sentence. The vaginal final girl. What does that mean? So I just wanted to explain that because people probably saw me laughing.
That'll be our new T-shirt.
Vaginal final girl.
Yeah.
I'm sure the ladies will be lining up to buy it. Yeah. So no, it's the characters by and large are likable. They have a little bit more depth, or at the very least, they're not just like I think there's an expectation, not necessarily based on real life, but based on just other movies and how other movies tend to portray characters who do things like these characters do, as being kind of one note. So when most of them prove to have like a layer where they're really good people underneath and try to help other people or say something thoughtful and insightful when they're talking about their roles in society, it's like, oh no, these characters are actually have got a bit more depth, they have a bit more going on to them, and as a result you don't necessarily want them to die. And even RJ doesn't really deserve it. Like, he's a dick. Well,
he should have had sex with the old lady. That's like horror rule number 1.
Well, yeah, if we were going to get into that moment then. So after he cries in the shower after having watched his girlfriend be ploughed with the 2-foot-long mammoth that Jackson's dick is, he's going to leave in the middle of the night. He's going to drive out, but the old woman's like standing there in front of the van, and he goes out to try and move her, and he's nice about it. He's like, hey, excuse me, ma'am, I'm just trying to leave. And do you need to go and say to your husband, shall I help you inside? And she starts getting close to him and touching him, and he sort of backs away a little bit, not scared, but just like, why did you do that? Like, what are you doing? Stop this.
Yeah, I think she like tries to kiss him, or maybe just gets real close, and then he literally says like, why did you do that? And and it's so funny because it just shows like the whole movie kind of like ends up being this well, not the whole movie I should say, but like kind of like these killers' motivation stuff. It just ends up being like a kind of like a thing about age and like what happens like when you're past your prime and like standards of beauty and stuff. And it's real funny because in general I think it's kind of a funny line, but it's like if she was an attractive younger woman, like you would never be like, why did you do that? Like you would you would know why they did that. But since it is someone so much older, like his first idea is like more confusion than like arousal or anything. It's just like, wait, why are you doing this? What's going on?
Oh yeah, he may have a reason not to want a beautiful woman to kiss him, but it wouldn't be confused by what she's trying to do. Yeah. So she stabs him in the neck with a knife or a screwdriver or something. I don't know. I was so quick I don't even think I remember what it was.
I don't think you really see it that well. Like, it is dark and everything. Yeah. So to me, it kind of looked like a box cutter or something. But
oh, sure.
It's something like that.
It wasn't something big. It was something that she could just sort of fit in her hand, basically. Yeah, is what we're saying.
But it's very brutal, very visceral, and then like it's just like very gorgeous looking. Like as she's like continuously stabbing him, it's all like silhouetted.
It's lit by the headlights of the van that's still on, so it's otherwise completely dark. But these headlights are lighting the scene.
Yeah, and then there's this great little bit too that I really like where he has like the music playing from the car, which they're playing Don't Fear the Reaper, very like notable song and stuff, and I think it works really well in the scene. But then there's this great little instance where earlier in the movie, which we should probably talk about, like the earlier scene with the old lady and her and Maxine. But,
I was saving it from when we talked about Maxine and stuff. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I'll just dig into it like a little bit here since we're on the scene. But like earlier in the movie, she mentioned like how she used to be like this beautiful ballerina and she loved to dance. And then there's this great little moment here where like she's this like crazy old lady who's just killing him and stabbing him very brutally, and like the headlights are getting covered in blood and it's very gory. And then there's like a second where the music stops and like switches over to this kind of classical music, and she just does like a quick little like dance that like from her olden ballerina days, which was just really nice, like little touch.
Yeah, that's kind of your first kill. Then of course Ortega wakes up, can't find RJ, and asks Wayne to help look. So they both go looking for him, and we spend a lot of time like walking with her, and at this point we're kind of thinking, I was thinking, like, is it just the old woman who's a killer and crazy, or like is this kind of a thing where the old man tries to keep her inside because he knows she's dangerous and he's trying to just stop her from killing people, or is he also in on it? And obviously it answers it soon enough. So the old woman, Pearl, she kills Wayne with a pitchfork through the barn wall or window or door, whatever it is, because he's looking through like a little hole, and then she stabs him. Now this was the kill that I didn't like that much at first, because it was so quick and it cut away that I thought, oh, that was just kind of whatever. But then it actually cut back to it after another scene played out, and you see him sort of peel off the pitchfork, and like the eye comes out, and it's like, oh, okay, that's a lot more interesting now. There's a lot more going on there.
Definitely, yeah. And like you said earlier, like him walking around in his underwear is just a very like funny visual. And there's like a really like good scene that kind of made me wince when he's first going into the barn. And
the nail. Nail.
And again, like one of these little touches that I just love that Wes does, where it's like you very clearly see the nail, and it's like, you know, the camera is like kind of at the bottom, like you're mostly just seeing his feet slowly walk towards it, and it's like, you know, that nail is going into that foot, and it's just like a matter of when. But it's like, it's just such a good like tension builder, even though it's like, yeah, you know, it's definitely gonna happen, but when it does, you're just like, god damn it. I always have like like things going through people's feet always makes me wince. And so I was definitely going like, ooh, when that happened.
Yeah, he I think the idea of him walking around and not going to put a shirt on when he's asked to go and help look for RJ is again just a sort of example of just like how comfortable he is with who he is, that he's willing to walk around in this stupid like little tight bit of underwear.
Yeah.
It's a funny visual for us, the audience, because it just kind of looks silly, but you know, it sort of talks about his overconfidence in a way.
Yeah. And now, I don't know if this is kind of weird, but so there's like these 3 holes in the barn door, and for a second, did you think that he was maybe gonna like put his dick through one of those holes?
No, I did not. It did not even occur to me in the slightest, Tim.
The only reason I was thinking that is because like there's this old like there's like this old dumb joke about like it was like, I think it's like a traveling salesman, and he goes to a like a farmer's house, and his car breaks down, and he has to spend the night, and there's like the farmer basically says like, yeah, you can sleep in the barn, just like, you know, the I think in the joke he specifically says like, don't stick your dick in like any of these 3 holes or whatever, and like for whatever reason the salesman does, and like the first one it's like, oh, it feels so good, and then he goes, the second one's like, oh, it feels good too, and then the third one like it doesn't feel good, and like he can't get his dick out, and then like the punchline of the joke is that, you know, he asks the farmer like, oh, what was behind those holes, and he's like, well, the first one was like my daughter, the second one was also my daughter, and the third one was a milking machine. So that's like this old like joke that I couldn't help but think of when I saw those 3 holes in the barn. And then also, since like, you know, the first like kill had kind of like, you know, sexual overtones to it, I was kind of wondering if like every kill was gonna have something like that. So I was like waiting for him to stick his dick in the one of the holes, but then when he didn't, instead just got the pitchfork through the eyes, I was a little upset. But yeah.
Well, that was a wild. I did not see that coming. This little story that we just got. Yeah. Then she comes back in. When it cuts back, she comes back in and just kind of stabs him a bit, and then covers him with some hay. Like, oh, that'll hide him.
Yeah.
That's all I'll take. But while this is going on, obviously Jenna Ortega's character Lorraine's wandering around the house, and the old man says, "I'll help you. Look, I'm looking for my wife. Like, you know, can you go to the basement, because like there's some batteries down there for the flashlights." And he locks her in. You know, he locks the door behind her, and she can't get out. But there's a great reveal. So the thing that the cop saw at the start of the movie, there's a previous victim in here. There's like a half of a man, like missing his legs, who's like hanging up in chains, completely naked and also very dead. But it's a really grotesque visual, and it's like, because the light isn't on at first, and it's like completely covered by shadows. So when she turns the light on and you see this just behind her, it's like this. It's a really good moment.
Agreed.
And then she starts, you know, screaming and whatnot, and all the rest of it. Yeah. There's some interesting stuff here though, because like obviously at this point the old man leads Jackson around looking for his wife around the water, and then the old woman of course kills Bobby Lynn by pushing her into the water when she's when she's trying to help her. She's trying to be nice. She's shown the old woman kindness and gets killed for it. When all this is playing out, you kind of get this spectrum, because at one point, like when the old couple start talking and they talk about Bobby Lynn, there's a line where she says, "You know I don't like blondes," or something like that, and she's like, "Okay, it's nice that you got Lorraine down in the basement, but that's not the one I want. I want that Maxine. She's the one that I want." So you get the impression that part of their thing is that like the wife like rapes like some women they kidnap. Was that the impression you were getting here?
Well, so the first thing, I thought was like, oh, okay, this is something they've done before. Because they have that line, and then like you said, they have that corpse in the basement, which I assumed was like some type of sex corpse. And then, my guess was that she's probably bi, because I mean, like, obviously, she comes onto RJ, but then, she does seem to have this, fixation on Maxine as well. So I guess she just, likes men and women.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's obvious. She likes both, because she clearly wants RJ, but also her husband. She tries to have sex with her husband earlier on, and he's like, I can't, my bad heart, kind of thing. The idea that he may have a heart attack if he tries to have sex. But no, I'm specifically talking about just the way it sounded like from the dialogue that they tend to, like, at least for her, whatever she wants out of it, that she always gets like the woman, like she always like does something with the woman. They never really go into too much depth as to exactly what it is. Part of it might be, I don't know, maybe she just like steals body parts. Maybe she like puts on their hair like Leatherface or something. I don't know.
Well, my guess is that so much of her motivation seems to be that she misses her youth and everything. So she thinks of herself as like this once beautiful woman that like men were attracted to. Well,
it's not just that she misses her youth though, because when she talks about her youth, she talks about how she was meant to be this next big thing, but then she got married instead, and her life went down this like quieter path. So that's one of the main contrasts with Maxine, is that Maxine is like poised to go on to be this like star potentially. And we don't actually know if she's going to be. I think that's part of the charm of the movie, is that we don't know if she is actually going to be that, but just people perceive her to be someone important. She's going to be a big star in some way. And
is probably where like the attraction comes from.
Yeah, but
the old lady and Maxine.
But the idea being that the old lady regrets what she's done with her life, and the idea that Maxine's at the point in her life where she still gets to make all those choices. So there's this not just this, so there's the regret over that, but then there's also this idea of like missing people being attracted to her, missing interaction with her husband, which does lead to one of the most memorable scenes in a recent horror movie, which is where Maxine is hiding under the bed. They've been looking for her, and they end up like on the bed, and they end up having sex, and he's like, "What about my heart?" And he's like, "You can do it. I believe in you." I don't remember the exact dialogue, but we get this,
something like that. Yeah,
but we get this top-down shot of his bare old ass like having sex with Pearl, but what's so great about it though is that it's this suspenseful scene, as ridiculous as it is, of Maxine trying to crawl out slowly from under the bed whilst they're distracted having sex to get out of the guest house. So really good stuff. But there's a lot of, like, I can't remember the exact order of events here. Obviously at one point she goes in and like gets Jenna Ortega out, who at this point has had some of her fingers like chopped at with an axe, because she gets through part of the door and like puts her hand out to unlock the door, and out of nowhere the old man just like hacks at her hand with an axe, and it looks like he doesn't really cleanly cut them off either. He just sort of hacks into them a couple of times, so they're kind of like half attached.
It actually, because of that, it seems a lot more brutal, because it's very like haphazard versus like very cleanly cut. It's like, it looks like stuff is still hanging on and bent in weird ways. What's really interesting is like it feels like there's like a lot of like horror nods here too. Like I mean, I don't know how intentional everything is, but I mean, like, the axe coming through the door, I can't help but think of like, The Shining a little bit. And then earlier on when like, Jackson's helping the old man look, they see like this car is half submerged in the, pond, which, made me think of Psycho. And I guess even kind of too, like when she first sees that corpse in the basement. I guess it's kind of like Psycho-ish, when like they first turn on the light and see the mother, which I mean it's hard kind of not to think of Psycho because of the they specifically mention it like earlier in the movie.
Yeah, and the thing that he brings up with Psycho as well is that the plot in that is a MacGuffin because it tricks you into what it actually is, and that's actually what the characters in this movie are going through. They think they're here to make a porno, but they end up in a horror movie.
Yeah.
So there's some foreshadowing with that as well, a little bit. So. But yeah, like I say, brutal scene with the axe hitting that. What's funny to me though is that Maxine goes and gets her after this scene, I think, and the entire time the couple were having sex in the guest house, like she could have just opened the door still and left. Like she obviously
of course,
she didn't know that the old man wasn't just waiting with the axe, so I get why she didn't, but she realistically had plenty of time to just get out.
Yeah. And like the thing is kind of funny too is like the old people are so over the top, but like in a weird way it is kind of like touching when they are having that very real conversation of like like, hey, like why don't you want to be with me anymore, like do you think I'm like can't stand the sight of me? And it's like, no, like I love you, like you're beautiful to me. And it's like as I don't know, like a weird way, like I don't think the movie wants you to necessarily like, it is like a very shocking, jarring like scene, but I don't think that necessarily wants you to be like, ooh, gross, like old people. Like I think there is a weird like touchingness to it.
That's actually the catch-22 I was talking about right at the start of the podcast, is that it's interesting that there's actually some empathy for the old characters, because what they talk about, the fact that they're struggling, the wife especially struggling with like what their marriage is now and what they've lost from their youth, and some of the things they say and talk about actually does garner a little bit of sympathy and make some sense. And obviously what they're doing is wrong, but you understand kind of what they're fighting for. If you take the whole movie as a metaphor rather than literal, then you kind of see this idea of like trying to fight for their youth back again a little bit, or at least in the wife's part anyway. And I think that's a little catch-22 in the sense that it does make them less intimidating as horror movie villains, because I don't think... Sure. I think by and large a more creepy horror movie villain is one that I can't sympathize with. I think right. Sympathizing or empathizing with the villain's motivations works better in most genres. Like it does. Like if you're watching an action movie, if you understand why the villain feels wronged and why they're doing the bad thing, it can make them more interesting. And that's almost always true. I think in a horror movie, it's the one genre where I'm not so sure it's actually necessarily good for the horror moviness of it, if that makes sense. Like, because all of a sudden I'm thinking, oh, these aren't two unstoppable killing machines. It's almost like kind of lucky that they've gotten away with murdering people. They're catching them off guard. They're doing it when they're not paid. They're not super strong or anything like that. They don't have.
I think I guess that is kind of a bit of a catch-22. Like the villains are kind of like. There's a lot of stuff that you can really think about and dig deep into the movie. I think the villains are the one thing that like, you kind of don't want to think too much about, because like really it looks like you could just easily push them down and then like just be done. But like I mean everything else is firing on all cylinders, so like it didn't bother me too much. But yeah, it's probably like the weakest part of the movie, surprisingly.
Yeah, oh, by the way, there's a great setup at the start of it. There's a lot of stuff that's set up and paid off in this movie. We talked about the alligator, we talked about some of the other like plot things. The guns. So the old man says when he first has the shotgun out, pointing it Wayne at the start of the movie, he says, "It's not even loaded, I just keep it here to like scare off trespassers, just pointing that's enough." And Wayne says, "Oh, I know what you mean, I've got one just like in the glove box." And you see that, like I think Bobby Lynn opens the glove box just in case, or maybe Maxine actually opens the glove box, and you see the handgun that's in there. But obviously the shotgun is loaded. He uses it multiple times during the film. But there's a great payoff towards the end where when Maxine goes to use this handgun and it doesn't fire, and I went, of course, because Wayne said he said it's the same thing. It's not loaded. It's just to scare people.
That's really good. I didn't catch up on obviously I knew he said that, but I didn't think to go back and like think about that again. But that's a really good payoff.
No, I really like that. It was just one of the small things that paid off. It does feel quite brutal when Maxine fights back here and like takes them both out. you know, it's kind of a carnage ending, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it does get like kind of like brutal and stuff, but it's kind of funny how it's kind of just like their oldness that does them in. Like basically, you know, the old man I actually thought that was like kind of funny, but like he basically just has a heart attack when I think it's yeah, Jenny Ortega's character kind of like is basically dead, and then just kind of like spurts up like has like a little spasm or spurts up some blood or something. And basically the old guy just has a heart attack, and dies. And then yeah, the old lady, they have their little like standoff, but yeah, Maxine's gun doesn't fire, so she goes to grab her shotgun and shoots it, but it's like so powerful and she's so frail, it just like flings her back.
Yeah. And even Jenny Ortega's death, where she just yells, "I hate you, I'm going away." As soon as she goes out the front door, she's immediately shot.
Bang.
Like, yeah, just immediately dead.
No, I forget though. How did Jackson die? Because like you said, Bobby Lynn was pushed into the pond and the gator got him. But did he just get shot?
I think the old man just shot him. Yeah, because he's out there in like the edge, because he finds like a car from a previous victim in the water, doesn't he? Yeah. But it's been 2 weeks, so I might be slightly fudging my memory on this, but
it's a little unfortunate because I actually did like his character, and it feels like he didn't really get like a very memorable death. Obviously, like I mean, I just saw it a few days ago, and I'm kind of struggling to remember exactly what happened. Yeah.
So Maxine does get to live. She leaves. She leaves in the car.
I was actually so basically, yeah, like the old lady, you know, she's been like flung backwards and she's like on the ground, and she's the thing that's really interesting too about the old couple is like they're very hypocritical, because on the one hand, like, you know, they're kind of like craving their youth and their beauty and sex, and they're very sexual, and like they want to have sex, and like the old lady's coming on to, you know, like the other people and stuff there. But then at the same time, like whenever, you know, she's kind of confronted with these people, she, you know, will instantly start like, you know, trying to degrade them and like calling them whores and sluts. And
well, I mean, I think that's very
sinners.
intentional. That plays into the key theme that a lot of people don't want to admit they have a sexual side or desires, and treat sex as this taboo subject that they're not supposed to talk about. You know, that ties into the conversation that the rest of the characters had earlier in the film. You know, they talked about how, they won't admit what they really feel, so they sort of look to us to like sort of live out what they're thinking, kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny because like, you know, you feel like, you know, most people kind of like look down on porn stars, but like, oh, it's so like dirty and sleazy, but at the same time, like most people watch porn, so it's kind of like, yeah, this weird hypocrisy. But
there absolutely is a hypocrisy to that in society, which I think is the point of these characters and what they kind of represent.
Yeah. And then like we should probably double back and talk about the earlier scene between Maxine and the old lady, but before we do that, just kind of like, you know, clear up the ending here. So
there's nothing like, clean about it. I thought you were going to say clean. There's like, no, her head goes splat.
Yeah, because I was like, so she's down on the ground, and you know, it's a horror movie, so you don't want like you know, you really want the hero to give it to the villain, and I thought she was gonna like kick her head in. I was waiting for her to stomp her or do something, and then when she got in the car to drive away, I was a little disappointed. I was like, oh really, that's all we're gonna get? But then as soon as like, you know, you kind of see her crawling closer towards the car, and then you kind of start getting the inkling like, oh yeah, that head's getting run over. And
it goes pop. It's like running over a pumpkin. Is how I describe it. It's a wonderful little moment. Yeah. Because I say we talked about it a little bit, but yeah, this is when it's after she's been swimming, and the old lady Pearl invites her in for some lemonade, and she feels too awkward to turn her down, so she kind of accepts it. And you know, she wants to edit from her husband as well, but the husband sees us like 2 glasses out for the lemonade, so it's like a whole non thing. But she's looking at folks. Look at me, I was so beautiful. I was just like you. I was the it girl. I was the one that people expected to have this big thing with, and like there's this really great juxtaposition of it where like they're kind of cutting back and forth between like a porno scene they're filming. So like they show her like pouring some lemonade, and then it goes to like the porno scene where the character in that is like pouring lemonade and having like a, you know, little conversation at a table. So there's a really nice back and forth, and I like when they do some of these shots where like it feels very 70s, where you kind of have like a split screen
going on, which is really cool. And then
you're right.
yeah,
I'd forgotten about that actually. Yeah, you're right. Like it cuts between like stuff that happens to link up with the porn movie. Yeah.
And then and it's kind of funny, like knowing, like, you know, like the porn itself, you know, it's about these kind of two strangers meeting and, like, you know, sitting down and having like lemonade, but there's a very sexual undertone to it. And then it's kind of funny because it's jumping back to this where, like, you know, you would think that there shouldn't be any sexual undertone, but then knowing like what the, you know, old lady wants and like later wants to do, there it actually is that.
And even at the end of the scene though, before she goes, she does try to touch her arm in a kind of a sexual way.
Yeah, I love, and this is another thing I think Ty West does really good, where like where there's like little stuff like this where it's like it's not like overly crazy or whatever, but it's just like something off is happening, and it's a very small thing, but it just really feels disturbing. Where yeah, because she's just wearing like these overalls, but like nothing underneath. So like, you know, it almost feels like kind of like I don't know, sexual, I guess, because like you can see like side boob and stuff going on, but then like, yeah, she just kind of like grazes her side a little bit, and then like her husband's coming home, it's like, oh, like my husband's here, you have to leave, don't worry, this will be our secret. And she's like, secret? Like, what are you talking about? But like, you can already starting to tell like something weird is going on here, and it's just
well, I think the other thing about this scene is just in that contrast with the porn scene. It's like you said, so then the porn scene, it's, you know, farmer's daughter's inviting the man in for lemonade, she pours the lemonade, and everything's a double entendre, there's a lot of looks and stuff. And then you have this scene where this old woman is, as we learn more as the film goes on, is attracted to this younger girl in whatever way she is, and is giving her lemonade, she's talking to her about her past, trying to connect with her, and then tries to touch her. I think there's the contrast between the moods in both scenes is that the porn scene, and then also, so the porn scene is the fantasy, right? The porn scene like is the typical porn fantasy of the two strangers and the immediately going to the horniness and the sex, and then the tone in the scene in the house with the old woman Pearl and Maxine is kind of more like reality. Like if you imagine like someone who just watched, not that I'm saying the old woman is this, but to try and explain what I'm saying here, if you imagine someone who's only ever watched porn thinks that porn's a valid representation of how sex actually works, and invites in, like, say, a neighbor they're attracted to for some lemonade, thinking, oh, this is the start of the sex, like we're going to have sex like porn, and like this would be the awkward tone where they're, you know, trying to initiate this, and the other person is oblivious that they're in this other person's fantasy and what they're doing. And it's not the exact same, because obviously if it was a man, especially a man who wasn't like 80, like maybe like, you know, a young woman wouldn't accept because she probably suspects that he might be a creep. Like you know, but that's part of the horror, I guess, is that you're unsuspecting of this really old woman being guilty of this kind of like thinking and where she's going with her plan. But like I think that's kind of the contrast, is that the fantasies we see in porn aren't necessarily translatable to everyday life, and most people have to be in the know and consent to what they're actually being a part of, right? You know, so I like, you know, maybe I'm overthinking it, but like I think
that's a very interesting thing to think about. And and again, like I feel like this is just a very smart movie where, you know, like this stuff feels very deliberate and planned. Like, you know, there's a reason why, you know, we're thinking about it probably like a little bit more than, you know, most kind of Hollywood straightforward, you know, kind of movies that are just like, all right, here's what's happening. Like, you know, this actually does, like you were talking about earlier, like it has like layers and there's meaning and, you know, to these kind of things.
Yeah, which I don't know if I was expecting going into it. It's kind of nice that it does go down that kind of that path, because, you know, I was going in thinking, oh, it'll be a stylish slasher movie where they die one by one, and I'd have had a great time with that, but it did have a bit more going for it. And there's kind of that final little touch at the end where, you know, we get cut to the police, we go back to the start of the movie where it's the police, you know, captain or sheriff or whoever he is walking around, and as they're taking out the bodies, because I wasn't sure what we're going to see when we come back to this, because I was like, well, I have to go back to, you have to bookend the movie with it,
right? Yeah.
But what do you like? What's the final moment? What did they learn or reveal or talk about that kind of wraps up the film? And so on the TV throughout the film. We saw it at the convenience store.
I forgot about this. Yeah,
we saw it in the house a couple of times. But there's this pastor guy on TV talking about Satanism and how music and porn and sex and all these things are ruining the great Christian American public and blah blah blah, right? Mm. And at the end of the film, as they're carrying out the dead bodies to the house, this TV's still playing, and the camera goes over to it, and the final reveal is that this guy says, "I lost my daughter to these people," and a giant photo of Maxine is like then revealed on stage where he's talking, and so she came from this guy, like she like her existence is her like moving away from this like trapped world that she was in, that her father had built around her, that she's now off and being free. So it kind of like, I think it cuts back to her, still in the van, like driving away at this point as well, just to sort of see her one last time before the movie ends. So it's just kind of this final reveal of like, no,
she like does some more coke as she's driving.
Oh yeah, I think she does. But it's this final reveal of like, she had a lot more in common, bizarrely, with Lorraine, and it kind of explained why she was so uncomfortable with how Lorraine was looking at her, because she probably had felt that stare before. She probably always felt like she was different to the other people that she was around growing up, and up until her late teens or whatever, whenever she decided to run away and go off and do what she was doing.
And it's just like another great example of like pointing out this hypocrisy, because he says like, "Oh, I lost my daughter to these people," when it's like, no, like you almost lost her to the people that are watching you. Like, this, couple that was listening to your program that, probably identifies as being Christian and all that stuff. Like they're the real villains that, she had to be worried about.
I actually thought you were going to say something different there, because I'll add on, you didn't lose her to these people. You lost her because of how you treated her. You lost her because of your judgmental nature, because of how you viewed anything that she was willing or wanted to be. And maybe like, would she go into the exact path she was getting into if like she didn't have the upbringing and felt like as closeted and as reserved by her father? Maybe not. It doesn't really matter. But so there's some interesting ideas there that are kind of, it's provoking you to think about it. I was still thinking about it for a while after I watched it.
Yeah.
The fact that I can still talk about it this much 2 weeks after I saw it is kind of a testament to it. Do you think it like? Do you think after we watched like the what was the movie we did that was terrible? What was that Kevin Bacon one?
Something darkness.
Just the darkness. So I say, just the darkness.
Yeah.
Could you imagine like watching that and then not talking about it for 2 weeks? Like,
oof. Yeah.
We would have forgotten everything. We'd had nothing to say about it.
Yeah. No, I was. This is something that's like, bit in my mind. Again, it's still fresh for me, but I mean, there's no way that, this doesn't end up, at the top of my list at the end of the year. It's, I mean, there's other movies I'm still excited for this year, but I mean, this is going to be the one to beat. There's, again, just so much I liked about it. And there's a lot of stuff that we haven't even like, that we've been talking probably longer than the movie at this point. There's like still stuff that we haven't really touched upon. Like, that one scene where, Pearl like goes into Maxine's room while she's still sleeping. She like undresses and starts like, spooning her and stuff. Like, that's another thing. It's just like really like creepy and unsettling, and it feels like such a, like gross, like intrusion. And then like I really like I think it's the final line of the movie too, because like you said, we go back to the cops and everything at the crime scene, and one of the cops finds the camera, and he's like, so like, what do you think is on here? And he says like, I don't know, but it's like one hell of a horror show. And then I think at that point, like the big X like comes up on the screen, which is really nice. But
I think the actual line is one effed up horror movie or something like that. Yeah.
So unfortunately, I did leave during the credits because it was super late. I was really tired. So I guess supposedly I heard about it afterwards, but I guess there was like a little teaser or preview of the next movie. I don't know. Did you see that or?
Do you know what's funny is that I was warned by Tara that there was a post-credit scene, but then forgot and left anyway.
Okay.
But I have some intel on this though. That they actually shot a whole prequel about Pearl called Pearl.
I heard about this. Yeah. I didn't know what the preview actually was, but I heard what it was later. So I could be wrong, but we might even get that this year.
Well, yeah, they already shot it all. It's already finished shooting.
Okay.
It's already in the can. Yeah.
I mean, how do you feel about that? I mean, I obviously I love this movie, so I'm like I'm gearing for more. I don't know what a prequel would entail, but
I am completely indifferent to it because like I don't know. I don't need more backstory for this character. I don't need there to be anything explained. This movie is completely standalone and does not need anything attached to it. That does not mean that the story of this young Pearl couldn't be good or couldn't be interesting, but I think by its nature, it's not going to feel like X though, is it? It's not going to be the same type of movie.
Right. No, I mean, yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, I'm excited for it just based on how much I like this movie and how much I'm excited about Ty West again. So for me, it's more about, oh hey, I love this guy's movie and I get to see another movie by him. Hopefully I'm assuming it'll probably be pretty different, but hopefully there was something about this character that he felt needed, they had a good idea for. So I'm excited on that end, but I mean, I do completely agree though. Like, yeah, this is a very standalone movie. I don't need more of the characters, but I think he might even said that it's a possible trilogy. So I don't know where that comes in, but
okay, we'll see how that goes, but all right.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm basically just excited because, hey, I really like this movie, so
I mean,
you want to give me another movie, sure.
It might be good, but I'm at a point in my life where like weird needless sequels and prequels aren't something I'm going to get excited about on just, oh, we're getting another one. Especially
sure.
It's not like if he said he was doing X2, not to be confused with X2 X-Men United,
right,
then it'd be like, okay, it probably won't be as good as the first, but if you're saying you're giving me a group of characters getting into a situation and you're going to be like poking more fun, maybe it'd be one set in the 80s so you can move to a different era of filmmaking, a different era of like ideas or whatever, like that'd be cool, or possibly, but at least I'd have some sort of idea what to expect. But a movie about Pearl is just kind of like, okay, well, I'll see what it is, but I'm neither excited nor not excited. I mean, the one upside to it, I suppose, is that like they did this clearly because they cared, and it was like maybe a little passion project for him and Mia Goth because they seem to want to do it. But like, I'd be curious to know, like, was this planned in advance, or was it when they were making this that they just started talking about it and he's like, oh, write a script, yeah, let's make another little movie about this Pearl character.
Yeah, I think what I've kind of gleaned from like I was listening to a podcast or two about it, or maybe saw like an article or something about it. I think it was basically like while they were filming, the idea kind of struck him, and I think they filmed in New Zealand, and it was during COVID and stuff, so things were kind of hard and a little iffy, and I think basically the idea kind of struck him, and he went to Mia Goth and was like, hey, I kind of got this idea, how do you feel about this? And then they, like you said, kind of filmed it in secret for a few weeks. So I mean, I'm very intrigued, and again, just going off on how much I like this movie, I'm excited for it, but yeah, I have no idea like what it'll be about, and yeah, is the tone going to be similar? Again, like you said, like we don't really need further backstory on these characters, but
especially since
I guess we'll see.
If it's all set when she's young, then like, are they going to say that she was already doing like killer like or like crazy things at that age, or is it going to do like a time passing thing where we see her like over the years start to like turn sinister and do bad things?
Yeah.
Either way, like I don't know if either of those sounds that appealing, but I don't know. We'll see. As far as Ty West is concerned, like he's made 2 great films now. I thought Innkeepers was just okay, but I would say that this feels kind of more in line with the quality that he sort of introduced me to with House of the Devil, which I do think is a really good movie.
I completely agree. Like I said, like I like his other movies. I don't really remember Sacrament that well, but I remember not hating it, being a little disappointed, and then not a horror movie, but I did like In the Valley of Violence. It was a good western, but again, like nothing has wowed me since House of the Devil. But I mean, this movie really did wow me. I think everything was just really working, like on every level for me. And
honestly, this movie proved to me that he's not a one-hit wonder, because I was kind of worried that he was, because after House of the Devil, Innkeepers was just okay. I haven't seen Sacrament, but I hadn't heard many great things about it, and I hadn't really heard much
honestly,
about his
you
West.
don't need to.
Yeah, like it didn't sound like there was anything must see. In the last few years, he'd been doing mostly just episodes of TV, so it kind of felt like he was maybe winding down or something. So this was kind of a pleasant return, but also a return in the sense that it's a return to form in a lot of ways as well. To the promise of that first movie. Not that it was his first movie, but it was the first movie I saw of him. So
right. I mean, I think that's really what most people probably say. Like, people take notice of him, or his career kind of begins with that.
Yeah. All right then. Well, I think we can rate the movie, Timmy. So what are you giving it?
Yeah, I mean, we've just like gushed about it for 2 hours. Obviously, this was, and I guess I didn't really mention it before, but this is the first time I've been back to the movies in a long time. I think what was the last thing I saw? Venom 2, which was like...
was that before or after Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City?
That was before. Okay, so yeah, you're right. So okay. Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City, which I did have a fun time with, but that's not like the same kind of movie experience. But so I guess that wasn't that long, because that was like November. So I mean, it's April now. But I mean that's still like a couple of months. Between going to the theaters, and this was just a very pleasant trip back. I had such a good time. I feel like I could keep going on and on about this movie, but I mean, it looks gorgeous. It has great characters, great writing. Like you said earlier, there's layers to it. It's not just a, simple, hey, here's some teens, let's kill them. Which, hey, those horror movies can be fun too, but it's always nice when there's something that actually makes you think, and there's a lot to say and examine about it. And, the horror works, the humor in it works, and like you said, I'm just really happy that to me, like, Ty West is back. Like, I love House of the Devil, and I've been waiting for another return to form, and I would probably put this below House of the Devil, which I mean, maybe part of it is because it's a little newer, but I still think that this is an absolute phenomenal film, and just a great work of horror. And I'm gonna actually go really high. I'm gonna give it a 9. I think it's truly great. I can't imagine like much will be able to top it this year for me, but it's not just like a good movie this year. I feel like this will be one that's gonna stay with me, that I'll be thinking about like well into when we're doing like our best of the 2020s. This is going to be pretty high up there.
Oh yeah, when we're both like in our 40s and we're doing the best of the decade.
Jesus. Yeah.
It's going to be great fun. Joe, we had a slight tech issue a few minutes ago, so we had to like sort of take a break. Everything's fine, the episode's okay, but we had to take a break, and we sort of joked, oh, we're already like over the runtime of the movie, this is going to be like close to 2 hours by the time we're done. And like Tim don't get to say shit, because I asked for his number and he went on there for like 5 minutes before he finally got to the 9. So I don't want to be blamed for the runtime, okay?
Oh yeah.
It's always me. I'm always blamed. At least on Screams, it's a 50-50 partnership.
Yeah, you're the one that reads the comments though, so if people are throwing shade, I probably ain't seeing it. You only send me the good stuff.
So yeah, my rating, it's a really good film. It's refreshing, because like I feel in my more JDG years where I come out of a lot of movies going, it was okay, or it was some good things about it, but like I come out of like a superhero movie now, or I come out of like a Ghostbusters Afterlife, and I'm like, it was a decent time, but it kind of suffers from this and this and whatever. I came out of this being like, no, I'm thinking about it. It had good cinematography where I felt really engrossed in what it was doing. It had good characters. It constantly subverts your preconceptions on what type of horror movie it is, what the characters are like, and what they represent. And it's making you think and sort of just question how you perceive various things. And it's always got a purpose. It's not just like going, "Ha, gotcha," or "we tricked you" for the sake of the surprise or for anything like that. It's about making you think, and it's got a statement, and it's but it's also through and through also a proper like grindhouse sleazy horror movie. It doesn't betray its roots in that sense either. So it's kind of a really good balancing act.
And it's funny too, because this is an A24 movie, which usually, is kind of associated with like that elevated kind of horror, which, I think it works perfectly well, but like, it's definitely, it doesn't feel like it has like it is a little sleazier than most of the stuff.
But it's the thing is though, it is elevated because it does have actual subtext. Like, so it is elevated in that sense. Like, you don't have to be Babadook to be called elevated horror. I think I'm going to be just slightly more restrained than Tim, though, and go with an 8.5. Slightly more restrained. You
make it sound like I'm a menace that's like running through the streets, giving out 9s willy nilly.
I'm just, you have to really earn your 9s and 10s from me. You really do. And in time, it might go up to the 9 if I see it again, and I still feel strongly. Maybe I'll like it even more on a repeat viewing. That happens with movies sometimes, but I think I'll go 8.5, but I think people who listen to this show, watch this show, know by now how many 5s and 6s I'm giving out. Like an 8.5 is a really good score. So I'm making that clear. It is a really great movie that horror fans should enjoy. So that's where I'm going with that. So there you go. Better than Scream 5, better than Texas Chainsaw Massacre from this year.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with
takes that. Perhaps. No, the hot take is that I said I like Texas Chainsaw Massacre more than Scream 5, which most people wouldn't agree with. But I had more fun with it, damn it.
Hey, I did like Scream 5, but I won't. I wouldn't put you on blast for that because. I like Texas Chainsaw as well. I'll be a bit of a Texas Chainsaw defender.
Do you know the thing is, though, the comparison with Scream 5 is an interesting one because I think this movie does what Scream 5 pretends to do. I think this movie actually deconstructs things about the horror genre and the characters in it and says something about them, whereas Scream 5 just points out the tropes and does them anyway. It doesn't actually say anything, it just does them, it just points them out.
Sure. Yeah, I think Scream 5 is still a fun time, but yeah, this movie definitely has more to say, and probably is better deconstruction, meta narrative than that movie. I'll agree with that.
Good, because I'm right. So there you go, that is our discussion of X. Hopefully you feel like we gave it to you.
Yeah,
because X going to give it to you. I've never even listened to that song. I hear the internet talk about it. It was what it was when Resident Evil 2 remake came out and everyone was making the jokes about Mr. X.
Okay, gotcha.
That's where I know it from more than anything, to be honest. Just to give you a peek behind the curtain here, but that has been this awaited Streams After Midnight episode. Hopefully you enjoyed it. And give us your thoughts on the film in the comments, please do. Tim's looking at me. Did you want to post for the thumbnail? Is that what you're thinking? You're thinking he's going to forget to ask?
Wait, we got the thumbnail. You gotta thank the Patreons. Like, what are you doing?
I'll get to the Patreons in a minute. I can't do them. I can't do them at the same time. Might present an interesting challenge, but I can't do it at the same time. So, Tim, post for the thumbnail, would you please?
Okay.
3, 2, 1, pause. I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of half expecting you to do like a like a seductive look or something.
I just gave the people 2 hours of a seductive look. They don't need a thumbnail to drive that home.
Fair enough. So there you go. I will say that obviously we'll be back with a regular episode in about 2 weeks' time on the channel. Patrons though next week can expect even more Screams, the April edition of that, where we just talk about all the random horror movies we've been watching, not for the show, and just sort of casually give some spoiler-free thoughts. And Tim's also promising another sort of game/quiz at the start of the show, so you get that for just $1 per month on our Patreon, patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, where you get even more streams once a month and a bonus episode where we review a movie, just like the regular episode, but like, you know, not available to everyone. So
right.
Go over
only the most elite can afford the Screams Patreon.
Yes. So that's patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. And of course, one of the higher tiers is a Patreon producer tier. So I will thank our Patreon producers right now. Thank you to Tyler Hess, Cindy Palacios, David Short, Board Now, Christopher Moy, David Brown, Al Treisman, and Alison M. Fordyce. They are our Patreon producers for the month, so thank you very much.
Should have just thrown Wayne's name in there.
just it's just a bit weird just with one name, Tim. I mean, well, they're going to think it's Bruce Wayne or something like.
Yes. The Batman.
I mean, let's face it, he could probably just like fund everything himself, like just.
Oh yeah, of course.
You know, $10,000 a month Patreon tier.
I was thinking about going to the movies to see the new Batman movie. It looks quite good. I want to see it, but geez, that runtime. It's tough. It's
really good though, Tim.
I know. I want to. It's just
I cannot tell you how good I feel that the last two movies I saw in the theater, but not in the same day, but the last two I saw in terms of back to back, it was Batman and X, and like I can't remember the last time I went like 2 trips in a row and came out feeling that pleased with myself.
Yeah. Well, we'll see if I can get it. I mean, it's going to be on HBO Max this month, I think. So it's not that much of a wait, but I still would like to see it in theaters if I can. The problem is like with it's I would have to see it at night because otherwise it's like it's going to be like almost like over 4 hours probably that I would be away and just maybe leaving my wife with like a 1-year-old to look after, which is very hard to do. So I can't really do it during the day. If I wait till he goes at night, then I have to go to like 9-10 o'clock showing and then like be out till 12-1. It's tough.
She knows who she married, Tim.
I mean, if it was a horror movie, I could say, hey, I gotta do it for the show. But,
True. Well, hey, you'll see it soon, okay?
Right.
But yeah, that is the show. Thank you very much for joining us, everyone. You know, like, subscribe, ding the bell for notifications, all those other things you can do for free to help the show. Get us on Twitter at ScreamsMidnight, and yeah, I'm also sharing clips of the show on TikTok now as a thing. So, like,
I sound so excited about it.
That's Male Fuzz Movies on TikTok. So go and check that out if you want to. But that is, I hate TikTok.
Coming soon to Snapchat.
I hate it. I hate TikTok, Tim. I hate it.
It sounds horrible.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
But it's a way to promote the show, so I have to try. So that's what it is.
Okay. I hope this is the clip that you're gonna put on it.
I hate TikTok, Tim. I hate it. But yeah, that is us. Thank you once again for watching. Let's say we always appreciate it. Keep watching scary movies, and we will see you next time. We're out.